This lesson is going to pick up where we left off yesterday. Yesterday, we went through multi-step equations with variables on both sides, notes day 1. Today is notes day 2. The target, however, is still the same. The goal is that you will be able to solve equations in one variable that contain more than one operation. So before we get into some problems, let's just quickly go over the steps again for how to solve a multi-step equation. These are the same steps that you wrote down yesterday, but just to reiterate them one more time. Step 1 is to simplify, and there's 2 parts to that. You should check to see if you can distribute, and you should combine like terms. Step 2 is to add or subtract, and again, there's 2 parts to that. Move the variable to one side, preferably the left, and move the constant to the other side, preferably the right. Step 3 is to multiply or divide by the coefficient. Generally, it's going to be to divide by the coefficient. Let's do 6 problems today. The first set of problems are all going to have distributing in them. So we'll do one problem together, and the second problem will be a you try problem. So let's try problem number 1. If I look at the left-hand side, it says 3k minus 25. This is already simplified. There's no parentheses, so I cannot distribute, and these are not like terms. So I just bring it down. 3k minus 25. The right-hand side can be simplified. I see parentheses, so I know that I need to distribute first. I'm going to take the negative 5 and draw my arrows in for distributing, and then multiply. Negative 5 times k makes negative 5k, and negative 5 times a negative 3 makes a positive 15. Now that my equation is simplified, I can go ahead and start solving. The goal is to put the variables on one side and the constants on the other. It doesn't matter which way you go, but to prepare us for inequalities later in the year, we're going to put the variable on the left-hand side. So I need to move this negative 5k across the line over to the left. Anytime I cross the line, I have to do the opposite. So I'm going to add 5k in order to move it over. 3k plus 5k just makes 8k. I drop down the negative 25 equals, on the right-hand side, the k's go away, and I drop down the 15. From here, I just have a regular two-step equation. So I box off the variable. Outside of the box is a negative 25. To undo that, I'm going to add 25 to both sides. My 25's cancel. Bring down the 8k equals 15 plus 25 makes 40. Final step, this says 8 times k. The opposite of that is to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 8. And I'm left with k is equal to 40 divided by 8 makes 5. So pretty much everything that I wrote today was the same steps as what we covered in the day 1 notes. The only difference is because I saw parentheses, I had to distribute before I could continue the solving process. So now let's take a look at a you try problem. I'm going to draw my line to keep my sides separate. Let's look at the left-hand side. On the left, I see a 43 plus 7x. Can this side of the equation be simplified? No, there are no parentheses, and these are not like terms, so there's nothing I can do. I just bring it down. Now let's look at the right-hand side. Can I simplify the right-hand side of this equation? Yes. Again, I see parentheses, so I need to get rid of them by distributing. 10 times 1 makes 10. 10 times a positive 4x makes positive 40x. Now let's solve. I need to move my x term across the line and over to the left. Anytime I go across that line, I have to do the opposite. So I'm going to subtract 40x from both sides. So I drop down the 43. What is positive 7 minus 40x? That makes a negative 33x. If you're using a calculator, you can just type that in exactly how you see it, 7 minus 40. If you're not using a calculator, you're going to need to remember your integer rules from pre-algebra. Same signs add, different signs subtract. I had different signs here, positive and a negative, so I had to subtract. 40 minus 7 is how I got 33. And because 40 is a bigger number, I keep that negative, and that's where the minus 33x came from. On the right-hand side, I need to drop down the 10, and the 40x's were opposite, so they cancel. Two-step equation. I box off the variable. Outside of the box, I see a positive 43. How do I move the positive 43 to the other side of the equation? I subtract it. So I minus 43 from both sides. These will cancel. I drop down the negative 33x equals 10 minus 43 makes negative 33. Again, different signs, so you subtract, keep the sign of the larger number. One more step. What is the final step? Just like always, I have to divide by the coefficient. The coefficient is a negative 33. This will cancel, so I'm left with x is equal to negative divided by a negative makes a positive. 33 divided by 33 makes 1. Any number divided by itself equals 1. So those are your two examples about how to solve when there's distributing involved. I'm going to clear my screen, and let's look at example 3, combining like terms. So problem number 3. I have a pretty long equation, so that needs to be simplified. It needs to be condensed. Take a look at the left-hand side. I have 3 terms. I see 3v, negative 10v, and negative 14. I need to combine like terms, and like terms are terms that have the same letter. So this 3v and this negative 10v can be combined. I do exactly what it says. So 3 minus 10 leaves me with negative 7v. The negative 14 is a constant, and there are no other constants on this side, so I just drop it down. On the right-hand side, I have a negative 9v and a positive 4v. Again, two terms that both have a v, so they are like terms. When I combine negative 5 plus 4, that leaves me with negative 5v. So you may need to combine on the left side, you may need to combine on the right side, or you might actually need to combine on both sides. Now let's solve. I have a v on both sides of the equation. I would like to move the one that's on the right across the line and over to the left. In order to cross, I need to do the opposite. So the opposite of a negative 5 is a positive 5v. Add it over to the other side. Negative 7 plus 5, different signs, so I subtract, leaves me with negative 2v. Drop down the negative 14 equals. Now on the right-hand side, the negative 5v and the positive 5v were opposites. They cancel. And I don't have anything left on this side. The number that represents nothing is 0. 0 is a number, so don't be afraid to use it in your equations. Box off the variable. Outside of the box is a negative 14. To get rid of it, I need to add it over to the other side. So I drop down the negative 2v. My 14's cancel. And 0 plus 14 is just 14. To finish this off, I need to divide both sides by negative 2. V equals positive divided by a negative is a negative. 14 divided by 2 is 7. Okay, time for a U-try problem. So let's take a look at problem number 4. The left-hand side has a lot of terms. Can I simplify the left-hand side? Yes, I see a term that has an r and a term that has a positive 4r. Remember, the term with just the r has an invisible 1 in front of it. So 1r plus 4r just makes 5r. This positive 4 that's in the middle here, that's a constant. And there's no other constants on this side, so I just bring down the positive 4. Now examine the right-hand side. Can I simplify the right-hand side of this equation? No, there are no parentheses, and 3 and 4r are not like terms, so I just bring it down. Now I need to combine my r's, and I would like my r's to be on the left-hand side of the equation. So I need to move this positive 4 over to the other side. What's the opposite of a positive 4r? A negative, so I need to subtract 4r from both sides. 5r minus 4r makes 1r. I drop down the positive 4 equals, I drop down the 3, and this last set of terms just cancel. Box off the variable. How do I move the positive 4 to the other side of the equation? I subtract it, so minus 4 from both sides. I drop down the 1r, and my 4's cancel. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. What's the final step? I need to divide both sides by the coefficient. The coefficient is 1. R equals a negative divided by a positive is a negative. 1 divided by 1 is just 1. So final answer, R equals negative 1. 2 more problems to go, and I saved the best ones for last. Problem number 5 and 6. We need to distribute and combine like terms. So let's take a look at problem number 5. Work with each side separately. So start with the left-hand side. I see parentheses, so that tells me the first step should be to distribute. I'm going to bring down the negative 2, and then I'm going to multiply n. 3 times 10n makes a positive 30n. 3 times negative 8 makes negative 24. That side of the equation still looks pretty long. So now I'm going to look to see if I can combine like terms. I have a negative 2, a positive 30n, and a negative 24. I only have one term that has an n, but I do have two constants here, and the constants can be combined. So I'm going to bring down the 30n and then combine my like terms. Negative 2 minus 24, same sign, so I add, just makes negative 26. All right, the left-hand side is simplified. So now we need to examine the right-hand side. Again, I see parentheses, so my very first step should be to distribute. 2 times 2n makes 4n. 2 times negative 3 makes negative 6. And then I just bring down the positive 6. That side also looks pretty big, so I'm going to look to see if I can combine like terms. Only one term has an n, the 4n, so I'm just going to bring it down. My set of like terms is the constants, the negative 6 and a positive 6. Actually, they're opposite numbers, so they just cancel all together and they go away. You could put a plus 0 here. It doesn't help, but it doesn't hurt either. Doesn't matter to me if you put it there or not. Time to solve. So let's move the n over to the other side of the equation. The opposite of a positive 4n is to make it a negative, so subtract 4n from both sides. 30n minus 4n is 26n. I drop down the negative 26 equals, and then on the right-hand side, since my n's canceled, I have to drop down that 0. So if you did not put it in this step up here, that's okay. But just remember that because nothing's there, now at this point, you have to have that 0. Find your variable, box it off. outside of the box is a negative 26. To get rid of it, I need to make it a positive. Add 26 to both sides. My constants will cancel, so I bring down the 26n equals 0 plus 26 is just 26. Final step, I divide both sides by the coefficient, which is 26. And I'm left with n was equal to 1. So that was a pretty involved problem, but the good news is that's pretty much as hard as it's going to get. That had everything in it. It had distributing on both sides. It had combining like terms on both sides. And then this whole section here is just the same old solving process that we've been doing for almost 10 problems now. One more problem to go, and it is a U-try problem, so follow along with me. Take a look at the left-hand side. This says 18 minus 10x. Can I simplify the left-hand side? No. There's no parentheses, and there are no like terms. There's nothing I can do, so I'm going to leave it alone. Now take a look at the right-hand side. Can the right-hand side be simplified? Yes. Right off the bat, I see parentheses. That tells me I have to simplify and distribute. So let's multiply in. 9 times negative 3x is negative 27x. 9 times 10 is a positive 90. The negative 4 is not part of the parentheses, so it does not get distributed. However, it does get brought down. It's still part of the problem. Can I simplify the right-hand side anymore? Yes, I have like terms. This positive 90 and this negative 4 are both constants, so they need to be put together. So I still have this negative 27x, and then a positive 90 minus 4 leaves me with a positive 86. Now that I've simplified the right-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and drop down the left-hand side, just so I have my equation all on the same line here. All right, 3 more steps to go. Now I need to combine my x's. So let's get rid of this negative 27x. How do I move a negative 27x over to the left-hand side? Make it a positive. So add 27x to both sides. I'm going to drop down the 18. Negative 10 plus 27. They are different signs, so I subtract. That'll give me 17x. 27 is a bigger number, and it was positive, so I need a plus sign there to separate those terms. Equals. These 27x's canceled, but I still bring down that 86. Box off the variable. What's the next step? We need to move the positive 18, and we move it by subtracting 18 from both sides. The 18s will cancel. I drop down the 17x equals 86 minus 18 is 68. What's the final step? Divide both sides by the coefficient, which is 17. These will cancel. And I get a final answer of x equals 4. So there you have it. There's 6 really good examples about how to solve equations with variables on both sides, including distributing, combining like terms, and a little bit of both.